Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event. Fight fans worldwide, you've tuned into the number one undisputed boxing podcast today. This is the Boxing Breakdown. Now, your heavy-handed, hard-hitting host, Mark Roxy.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of the Boxing Breakdown. I'm your host, Mark Roxy, and I am delighted that you are with us today for another episode, and I am here with my partner in crime, Mr. Harold Hunt. What's up, brother?
Hey, how you doing, man? Good to be on this podcast again. It's a blessing every time.
What's up? And for those of you tuning in on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get podcasts, thank you for being with us. And if you are following us on Facebook or YouTube, you can catch the broadcast there as well. And you will actually be able to see us live talking about if you are so inclined. But if not, just make sure you subscribe to our Spotify and all that good stuff. And you can definitely hear there's man, I don't even know how many episodes there are of the Boxing Breakdown, but it's in the hundreds at this point, and you can go back and listen. They're really great episodes, and here we are, Harold, once again. Thanks for your impromptu, hey, Mark, there's too much going on. Let's get on. We got to go live today, and so here we are. It's a beautiful, beautiful rainy Thursday. And we are in the studio, and let's get into this. We're gonna talk a little bit about some Zuffa action. Harold got some interesting news about Zuffa, and then we're gonna break down Thurman versus FUndora, the fight that happened this past week, and then we'll get into a little Xander Zayas versus Jaron Boots Ennis. We'll talk a little bit about that, and then finally we'll come back to actually two names that we really haven't heard a lot about in recent podcasts, but they're surfacing back in the news, and that would be Floyd Mayweather and Mr. Manny Pacquiao. So we'll get into that as well. So buckle up. Here we go. Let's go. Talk to me about Zuffaboxing, Harold. What do you got?
Well, as we know, Zuffa has recently gotten to the situation where their bill is being passed through Congress. So far, it's the Senate, and it has to go to the House, and they have to sign off on it. And the president has already said he's going to sign off on it. And basically what it is it gives the fighters an opportunity for a choice. They can either go with the status quo, meaning that the IBF and WBC and all those other organizations, they can go through them and go through their system and be champion within their sanctioning bodies. The other thing that they're trying to put into place now is they could sign with a Zuffa or a UBO, meaning that one organization handles the pay and handles everything, but the sanctioning body, WBC and WBA and all those other entities are not involved in their championship. Now, the situation is, the main part of this, the changing of the Ali bill, is the fact that the UBOs do not have to disclose how much money is made on the fight.
Oh, really?
Meaning that the fighter will only get the same fee no matter what the promoter decides to give him. Whereas with the sanctioning bodies, they must let them know, and then they'll get paid accordingly to the gate of the show. The other part of it that we kind of ignore is that if it passes, there's no more junior middleweight, there's no more junior flyweight. There's just the regular 8 division. I believe it's 8 divisions, and because of those 8 divisions, even the sanctioning bodies have to alleviate the junior this and the intern this and all that. They got to go straight 8 weight classes. Now that's positive in that you absolutely know where who's fighting in what division. But what happens is a lot of fighters who do the intern this and these different belts, they won't have the opportunity to fight for, even though they're minor belts, they're still major in certain markets. And a lot of people who are fans, we don't know it's not a world title. All we know is that it's a WBC something, intercontinental, regional, whatever, and we'll come out and we'll watch that fight, and the promoters can promote that fight. So that changes that. The main thing is these fighters have opportunity to either go to UBO and have some kind of health care, this, that, and the other, and work and go move forward. If they have no inclination to be a world champion, they just want to make money, enjoy the sport, and be a champion in Zuffaboxing or whatever UBO appears after this bill is signed, that's fine. Or they can go the other way where they can stay with the sanctioning bodies. And that's where the pedigree comes in and the past history comes in. And that's really prevalent with a lot of these fighters. They want the same belt that Floyd had, or Joe Louis had, or Muhammad Ali had. So to me, basically, I was kind of skeptical, but the fighters have a choice. They can go one way or the other. The only thing that I don't like is all of a sudden, all these belts are not for us. I'm a judge. I like doing these different fights with these sanctioned bodies who have this belt and that belt. It may not be the major belt, but it's an up-and-coming belt. Those belts will be alleviated. And that's the only thing I'm looking at. So right now, if it passes, it'll work. Now, right now, De La Hoya, all of a sudden, he wants to oppose it. But he started too late. So he's trying to have meetings with congressmen and senators now this week and try to not let it pass through Senate. But he should have been, he could have been involved earlier, not waiting until it's passed one section of the government. Now it has to pass the other section. And Trump already said he's going to sign off on it.
Yeah. I think he is. And interesting for those of you that don't know what Zuffa is, because maybe it will be a good time to just kind of review what Zuffa actually is, because not everybody is deeply embedded in the sport like we are and understands what we're even talking about, right? So just a little background, Zuffa is a professional boxing promotion, right? And I think that they launched this new promotion back in 2025.
Dana White and Sheik from Saudi Arabia. It's
actually, even though Dana White is he's the lead, right? And he's backed by Saudi capital, actually. It's actually a company that's run by TKO Group Holdings, which is a parent company of the UFC, actually. So really it's TKO Holdings. UFC is one of their blue chips within the framework of that. And then, of course, now we've got Zuffa that's in there as well. So, in other words, it's like the UFC is a centralized league that's basically kind of modeled after boxing. And now they're going after boxing, and they're bringing boxing as a as a similar model, and really it's their main platform is because, or they're running on a platform that says like, let's fix boxing. Boxing is broken. It's not, it's broken into little pieces. It's fragmented at best. And let's take that and let's try to organize that. And what they're basically trying to do is create exclusive fighting contracts under Zuffa. So, for those of you, Harold did speak about the belts, and there's the WBC, WBO, NABF. There's all these different belts, IBO, on and on, and all of these belts are separate entities. So when a fighter fights, in essence, they're paying sanctioning fees for that belt, right? There's some sort of fee that gets paid to the belt. But this is kind of different because everything goes under the TKO Group Holdings and basically under Zuffaboxing. And so they're trying to kind of create their own brand. Am I explaining that correct, Harold?
Yes, I would say so. But the main thing is they're taking the opportunities for these fighters to earn large amounts of money with their cachet, how well they are, how good they are, how they have a fan base. They're taking that away from them. Say the fight on one side is worth $50 million. TKO, Zuffa, they can pay them such a small percentage.
Yeah.
For that fight. The
They
same
can
fight
get
on the other side.
$100,000 for the fight, and Zuffa Corporation, walks away with tens of millions of dollars, right? So
On the other side, the fighter would make $2-3 million because of that situation. So, Mark, just like you said, the UFC has a model that's functioning well. Even though they were sued by the UFC fighters because they felt like they were being underpaid.
Yeah, for sure.
And now the same system, they're trying to insert the same system into boxing. Yes, boxing is fragmented, but that's the beauty to me of boxing. It is so unregulated to the point where sometimes we get some of the greatest opportunities in sports, the best sport on earth, not just because of in the ring, but how things come together so unorthodox. And that to me is spectacular. Now, I don't want that to change, even though it's a liability to some situations and it's positive in others. Yeah. So I don't want a commission over boxing. I don't want a commission like in football. I don't want that. I want the way it's set up now, even though it's haphazard in the minds of many, I think it still works. We had the Floyds, we had the Ray Leonards, we had the Ollies, we had Roy Jones, we had all those guys, even though boxing was constantly under fire.
Right.
We still had that wonderful run of fights over our lifetime.
Right. Well, I mean, it's interesting. It's an interesting play, and certainly we haven't really talked about this a lot on the air. But one of the things that I'm interested in is like, the fighters who maybe will never see a 6-figure payday or $1 million payday and above have more of an opportunity to make a living at fighting, right? But then the fighters that the very, very few fighters that are at the very, very top of the sport who would much rather be in a position to negotiate large sums of money for their fights, will be in a lesser position if Zuffa takes hold, right? If Zuffa really ends up, consuming the marketplace, then that could be an issue. Am I understanding that correctly?
I would say so. It's just that the pedigree and the history of these belts, do they matter anymore? If they don't matter to the up and coming fighters, if they're bred coming up out of amateur, what have you, with those belts don't really matter. Go for the situation where you can take care of your family and you can still do your sport, and you aspire to have the Zuffa belt, that type of thing, then you should go that way. But if your history, if you want to do that, that's another way. It's all up with the fighters. So I'm thinking the up and coming fighters who are entering the pro ranks now, if they're motivated by the belts, they may have some trepidation in which way they want to go. But if they have kids and a wife and a family and they want to do this sport as long as they can and take care of their family and have a mental comfort knowing that they got a salary, they can train, and their kids can go to the dentist and this, that, and the other. As you said, some of them may not aspire to be a world champion, but they want to enjoy the sport and do the best they can and take care of their family as you go along. That's a good option.
So what I hear in that is I hear both sides, and one of the things that comes to mind is it would almost be like you could make the argument that it is the equivalent of being an entrepreneur versus working for a corporation, right? If you work for a corporation, oftentimes you're in that corporation, you're locked into that structure. They pretty much pay you a very, very handsome sum of money to be in the corporation. And when your time is up, you'll get that slip and you'll be done. And that's it. When you are an entrepreneur, you may struggle for many, many years, and hopefully one day you will build something bigger and greater, and you will have total autonomy with it. And one could say that there's less of a chance of you being fired, right? So a significantly less chance. And a lot of it rides on your ingenuity and your creativity, right? So the same could be that picture could actually be deployed here in the sport of boxing, because you have one scenario where you're giving your future to a corporation, right? Zuffaboxing. And the other is that you are, in control of where you fight and how you move in the marketplace, right? And so in that way, you could work with the WBC or the WBO or the IBF or the NABO or whatever sanctioning body you choose to work with, or you actually could work with all of them. And you could unify all those titles, and then you could have all of those titles. And really the holy grail for a fighter is to be a unified world champion. Really, that's what most fighters want to achieve. And if you put the holy grail of all of it together, you would want to be, a unified world champion. You would want to have a boatload of money that you've amassed over your career, right? And you would want to get out with your faculties intact, right? That would be the holy grail for any athlete in the sport, in the fighting sports across the board. So I wonder, by saying that to you, I wonder if that shifts your thought, or do you have a thought about that?
Well, what you said made a lot of sense, and there's two sides of it. It all depends on your preference. So I can't really go either way because I'm not a fighter. I don't have that mindset. And I can't really look at it from my standpoint, just being a judge. I'm selfish. I want to do as many fights as possible. And the other situation gives me the opportunity to do so because of all the belts and all the different this and that and the other, which just leads to me to being around the ring and doing what I love to do. But on the other hand, for the health of the sport and the common man who, as you said, will maybe never, make millions or whatever, but they can take care of their family. It's really a good option. And I can't really go either way with it. I just know that some of the fighters may feel like they're being underpaid, but to sacrifice that for the health of their children and their family, and they still get to enjoy the sport that they love as long as they can and be compensated adequately for it, is it has its merits. It's just a preference, and I'm glad they have a preference.
Well, it also shifts the landscape in a lot of the other areas, the ancillary areas where people make money in boxing. For example, managers, advisors. I assume it would affect all of these different areas. It would affect teams. It would affect, who works corners. It would affect, pretty much every aspect of the boxing landscape. Actually, if you really investigated and you really spend some time thinking about how the Zuffaboxing thing could manifest. So it's interesting, man. I don't really have a position either way. I don't have a, how do I say? I don't really have skin in that game right now. So for me, it's more about, what's best for the fighters. And, I always like to think of, in general, fighters put their lives on the line. So it really comes down to, they're the ones that are getting punched in the head for a living. What is it that's going to be the best for the fighter who's actually donning those gloves and, with no headgear, oftentimes very, very tiny gloves, and they're going in there and they're taking a lot of damage to feed their families. And that to me always is the overriding factor in almost all of my thinking around boxing, especially when I'm working on the other end of the sport and not, doing either commentating or our podcast. When I'm in there, from the moment I walk in there and you see all these people, these guys, guys are in there to destroy you, basically, to get paid and feed their families. That's a real thing. That's a real thing on the inside of the sport. We're not talking about that right now, but I'm just saying, if it doesn't serve the fighter, it's tricky. And that's not to take the promoter out, because, bro, like, promoters have to eat too. They have families to feed as well. Behind every promotional company, there's families that are being fed from that promotional company. It's not just, like this, it's interesting because promoters have this
aura.
It's like an aura, basically, like, okay, guys like Don King or, Oscar De La Hoya, or, you always think of like one figurehead. You oftentimes don't understand that there's an entire community that's being fed behind these promotional companies, and likewise fighters. So coming in and swooping in and this is what we're going to do is great. But I would spend, like, if I'm building a corporation, like Zuffa is here, I would definitely spend some time sending some surveys out, sending some surveys out to the to the fighters and managers and advisors and pretty much trainers and judges and everybody should be surveyed on this one, and I think if they would be remiss not to do that. What do you think?
The bottom line is the money, and it seems to me that it seems to me that it's just on the Zuffa side, TKO side, they get to control most of the funding that comes from the promotions and the events. And the more control they have, more percentage they have is, that's capitalism.
Well, it is, but they don't actually have the control. They have the perceived control, Harold. The control is actually the fighters. I know the
if you're on the Zuffa side, you may not, only because your contract stipulates, you have to fight these many fights. You get this health care, and this is how much you get per fight. Yeah. So you're just you're assigned to the contract, and like we said earlier, if the fight generates a certain amount of money, you may not be compensated for your worth in that promotion.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm just how do I say it? I think it's very interesting what's happening here. I think it's actually groundbreaking. It is monumental. It's everything, it's just everything that is good in the sport, that it's always evolving and moving and shifting. And I love that. And, hats off to Zuffa for coming in and doing what they're doing and shaking things up. And hopefully when the shake is done, and everything falls, we have a nice, beautiful landscape that benefits the fighters and that benefits the fans and also benefits the promoters and the, everybody likewise, that's what you hope. So let's,
as of now, I just see a definite difference. And as I said earlier, I'm glad that the fighters have an opportunity to go one way or the other. Right. They're not mandated or they're forced to go either way. They have a choice. And I think that's the good part about it. They have a choice. They can either go that way or not.
Yeah. Man, this Zuffa thing, man, this is a very interesting company, actually. If you do any research on the company itself, all I can say is go do your research. Go take a look
Yes.
and peek into who they are and who's involved. You know, it's very, very interesting to see the players. You know, yeah, it's very interesting. You know, there's WWE people, influencers, and people involved in a lot of different areas of the sports entertainment field, and it's just really interesting to see. You know, I'll be very interested to see what they do. You know,
Yeah, because the
time will tell.
UFC devoured all of their competition.
Yeah,
All the other I mean, the other MMA type organizations, they all were alleviated or degraded to the point where you don't even know who they are anymore because they simply just took over,
yeah.
that area. So that could be a recipe that they're looking for that could happen in boxing, where they just take everything over. The only thing is, Mark, I have to say this: it's just the pedigree of the belts. How how historical are these fighters? How do they really feel about having those belts, fighting for those belts? You know, at the demise of their family, this and that and the other. I want that BC belt or I want the IBF belt, and I'm willing to do whatever I have to take to get it because of the
Yeah.
history. And that's the main thing. How do the fighters look at this? How do
Well,
they
I,
look at
I
it?
I think it's segmented. I think it's really segmented because I don't think every fighter you can make an argument that there's a ton boatload of fighters that care. They do not care about a belt. They know they may never get to a belt. They're not interested in the belts. They're interested in the money, right? And then there's a whole host of other fighters that all they want are the belts, right? And then there's another pool that want the belts and the money. And so there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of different types of fighters, and not all fighters are looking for the dream of putting the WBC belt, the green and gold around their waist, and like I'm a WBC world champion. There are a lot that do. But there's all kinds of fighters out there in this world that have a lot of different, interests. And I guess that would lead me to say this. There's room for everybody, right? There's room for everybody in this sport. And the question is just how does it matriculate? And, with time, we're going to see if the Zuffa model works, if the fighters are happy there. I know I have a fighter, someone who I came up through the amateurs with, and I watched fight recently, and I thought that the performance was very poor. It was a poor performance that he put on, but it was on Zuffa, and I wonder, how much of that was just being enticed by a lot of money, or what exactly were the circumstances around the loss? Because I know this fighter, and I know the fighter can produce a much higher quality of work. And, so the question becomes like, did this fighter take that on short notice? Did they take it on short notice and with a lot of money at stake? What exactly was happening that, caused this fighter to lose, who's actually a very accomplished fighter and usually would not lose. Right. So a lot of stuff is happening here, and I look forward to covering it more, and you and I getting deeper into, that conversation. I'm sure this is not the last time we will talk about Zuffaboxing for sure. But right now, let's make just a quick little jaunt over. Quick little jaunt over. We're going to jaunt over to the Thurman and FUndora fight. What do you got, Harold?
Well, as you know, we had a great fight coming up here. I already passed Thurman and FUndora. FUndora proved that he is teachable. If the fans here, they know they watched FUndora previously. He usually fights on the inside. He's an inside fighter, and his criticism was he never used his height and length to his advantage because he liked to mix up on the inside.
Yeah.
The fight before this, he actually utilized that length and that height, and he showed with Tim Tszyu that he is able to be teachable. He's able to use his attributes
Yeah.
on from fight to fight. He carried that over with the Thurman fight, and at that point now he looks pretty unbeatable. His height, his reach, and now his intellect using his physical attributes are to the forefront now. When I saw Keith Thurman training, and he had a heavy bag or a speed bag mounted like 6 feet in the air,
Yeah.
and he was throwing overhand rights at it. Right then, I had a kind of a pause because you have to get close enough to actually do that. And he really, in the fight, he didn't find a way to get close enough to do that. If he looked at any kind of scouting report on FUndora, when FUndora was knocked out the one time, it was on the inside. He came in, he dropped his hand, he got hit clean, and that happened. I don't see that ever happening again for FUndora, especially after these two performances. So I'm pretty happy with him, his movement, but his body is thicker and more taut than usual. I've never seen him. He's never going to look filled out to me, I don't believe, but he looked really, he had more mass, more muscle this time, and he looked really good. So Thurman, he just was not able to get inside to cut the distance, and that was his detriment there. But Mark, this was a classic foot fight, meaning that whoever had their foot on the outside continued to get the advantage. I don't understand why Thurman went the way he went the whole fight into the power, where his IQ is excellent. Either he was forced into that or he just simply didn't understand that, which I don't believe. So what are your thoughts on that, Mark?
Well, before I give you my thoughts on that, I will touch on that. I just wanted to say that this fight was just for the listeners so that they understand. This fight was between Keith Thurman and FUndora, was at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas. It happened, and just for historical context, it was March 28th, 2026. And yeah, Keith Thurman, smaller guy, fighting a taller guy, was stopped in the 6th round. The stoppage was, by and large, it was a controversial stoppage generated by Thurman, meaning the controversy was generated by Thurman suggesting that the referee jumped in too early, and the fight was, should have kept going. It's a world title fight. I understand that, but there was some scuttlebutt around the fight, and really, interestingly enough, Keith Thurman has been plagued with a lot of injury for a long time. His last fight was, I guess it was in 2025, like in March of 2025 was the last time he fought. And, he fought a kid named Brock Jarvis, and he knocked that kid out, TKO'd him in the 3rd round. So it was a good showing, saying, hey, like, I'm back, give me another shot. He got the shot. Here's what I want to say, Harold, other than what I just said, which is that tactically, Keith Thurman had no chance of winning that fight tactically. And I'll tell you why I feel that way. Because and that's after the fight happened, is because I don't think that Keith Thurman, number one, had the reach to ever get close enough to FUndora. The goal for this fight with FUndora after his recent fight, because FUndora was he was basically KO'd by Brian Mendoza, and after that fight, there's been a significant shift in the style in which he fights against Tim Tszyu, Cordell Booker. He fought Tim Tszyu again. and stopped him again. You can see the manifestation or the development of the style of Fundora, and he's consistent with his control of the distance, Harold. So I would say that even though, yes, of course it's, getting your feet in the right position, you got to get your feet there in order to be able to get your work. You got to put the feet there first, right? If the feet don't get there, the work isn't going to happen. You're not going to get the work done. So in this fight, I think the way that Fundora managed distance was so well done that, Thurman had a very, very difficult time getting in range where he could actually land anything that was material, especially up top. What he was landing was to the body. And in order for him to get that body work, he was eating 2 or 3 shots, if not more, in those moments because of the range, right? So I have a 6-foot stick. You have a 4-foot stick. As long as I put my feet where they belong, I'm going to keep hitting you with the 6-foot stick, and you're never going to hit me with the 4-foot stick because I have my feet where they need to be. The focus of where my feet are, at the proper distance where your 4-foot stick will never, ever touch me. And as long as I'm disciplined with that, that's the way that's going to go. And that's what happened in the fight. The moments where Keith Thurman got there, Fundora was letting his hands go. He was throwing combination punches, and I don't think that Keith Thurman really had much of a chance. I don't mean to be disrespectful to Keith Thurman. I just didn't see that was the fight. Right? That was not the kind of fight that I would have liked to see Keith Thurman have a different fight, right? There are a lot of other fighters out there that you could make really great television with Keith Thurman. And that is not one where it's going to really show Keith Thurman super well. So that's just my opinion. Sorry. That was a rant.
It was clear and precise. So I see exactly that. And I think, I don't know if he's going to retire or not. The stoppage to me was not controversial.
Yeah.
To the eye of most people, you're looking for clean punches, his head flying, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Now, in that sequence before it was stopped, yes, he got hit a couple times, clean his head flew, but he got hit 4 other times through the gloves. He had his hands up around his head, but he was still taking that force.
Yeah.
So to the average layman, he said, well, he only hit him twice in that sequence and he blocked all the other ones.
Yeah.
But the referee saw, and Mark, I know you saw, that he was taking punishment every time he got hit, hands up or hands down. It was really powerful punching. And some fighters, they don't care if your hand is up. They're going to hit you there anyway because they know, that force is still going to come through your hands and affect you. And that's what I saw in that closing sequence before the ref stopped it. I counted 7 punches. 2 of them were clean where the head flew back and you could see it. But 5 other ones were just really powerful through his guard that was rocking him. And I thought the stoppage was well justified.
Well, Harold, I do also want to take a moment to just give, the respect that Keith Thurman deserves. We oftentimes just get right into the nitty gritty and talk about the fight and stuff. But what folks have to remember is Keith Thurman's record is 31-2, right? He's got 1 KO on his record, and that came from Fundora the other night, right? He's got 1 TKO, and that TKO was controversial. Keith Thurman he's got 31 wins and 23 big wins by KO. Keith Thurman in his prime, right? In his prime, which, I'm not saying he's not in his prime. He's definitely past his prime, but no disrespect, Thurman, but that's the best way I could say it. But he's fought Manny Pacquiao, he fought Josecito Lopez, he fought Danny Garcia, he fought, he beat Danny Garcia. He beat Sean Porter. He beat Luis Collazo. He beat Robert Guerrero. He beat Julio Diaz, Jesus Soto-Karash. There are so many names on Carlos Quintana. He has a stellar resume of very good competition, dating all the way back to November 9th, 2007 was his first fight, Keith Thurman, right? He TKO'd a guy named Kenzie Rodney, and he did that in Tampa, Florida, right? Which is his hometown. But the guy has had a very, very long, successful career, and we forget that because, boxing has a way of forgetting fighters when they step away from boxing for a year or two. You're like obsolete, right? But this guy, Keith Thurman, one time, this guy is amazing. Keith Thurman, shout out to you. 99.9% of the fighters out here in the world should be so lucky to have a career like you have had. Whether you retire or not is, I would understand either way, but I think you may still have some more left in your tank. And certainly I'd love to see you because you have given us, tremendous amount of entertainment over the years, and you are an outstanding fighter. So I just want to say that.
Yes, I believe matchmaking will be a factor going forward.
Yeah.
He would need to, if he continues to fight, I'm sure he'll be matched appropriately for his skill set at this time.
Yeah.
But as you said, anyone would probably have a issue with FUndora.
Right.
So.
Well, 154, right? He's fighting He's fighting at 154. So the question becomes, like, who else is out there that would want to fight, with him? You know what I mean? Is there anybody else in 154 that would, how do I say it, would give him a shot? I think he's still got one or two more shots, probably from up and coming guys that are, moving up in the rankings, right?
A gatekeeper, I don't think that he's there yet as a gatekeeper, because I think if the style's appropriate, if he fights someone who has a 4-foot stick like himself, I think he has a better chance to prevail. But he still has the pedigree and the mindset, and he's not in bad shape. He just ran up across somebody who physically had a lot more than his style could really, be effective.
Do you think he could go up in weight? You think he could go up one more weight class, or?
Well, no. I think the 11 inches of reach from FUndora toward him was a big factor.
Yeah. The guys at the division, the guys in the 154, right? 154 pound division, super welterweight division. You've got Jaron Ennis, you've got Virgil Ortiz, Sebastian FUndora, Xander Zayas. It's stacked. You've got, Israel Madrimov. There's so many guys there. The only thing I could think of is maybe, what would be a good fight? Tim Tszyu would be a good fight. That would be a fun fight to watch. Would you watch that fight? I would. Yes. I would love to see that fight. I think Tim Tszyu, off of his loss, against Keith Thurman, that would be a lot of fun. Let's see if they make it. Let's see if the promoters are listening to the Boxing Breakdown, and let's see if they make that fight.
Yeah, that is a good suggestion, Mark. Excellent, actually.
Yeah, I would love to see that fight. I think it would be a bloody mess. It would be so much fun to see those two guys lock horns. Thurman, what do you think? Put it in the comments. Give us your comments, bro. You guys, and if you're listening into the Boxing Breakdown, if you are on Facebook, you definitely can put your comments in there. Same thing with YouTube. You can drop your comments in there and we'll see it on screen and we'll bring them up and we can talk about it if you want. I don't know if you guys even see that feature right now today, but it is there. And also please go to Instagram and Facebook and join us, follow us, please, everyone. It's at The Boxing Breakdown. We would love to have you guys following us there. And don't forget to like us on Spotify, hit the like so that when we come live with a new episode, you automatically know. And on YouTube, hit that subscribe and notification so you know that we're there. We appreciate that. And we love to do this podcast and we love to have you with us. And it's just a lot of fun. And so thank you for being with us again. And one more time, let's just take a jump over to the Xander Zayas versus Jaron Boots Ennis prospective fight. I think that's in the works. I think it's signed, sealed, and delivered, right? It's signed. So that's happening.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting in that Xander is really putting himself out there to defend his belts, to make himself, the next Puerto Rican star. And
well, he's already a Puerto Rican star. He's already, man, the people, like the Puerto Rican fans, and diehards, Xander Zayas is our guy, being Puerto Riqueño myself, Xander Zayas is not he's already a star, bro. He doesn't have, he's just going to become a bigger star.
And I think his star power doesn't change whether he wins or loses.
Yeah.
Because a return situation or going another way will always solidify him as a star in Puerto Rico. What I was speaking of, Trinidad became worldwide actually after a loss. Cotto became a worldwide name actually after a loss and a rebound.
Wait, hold on. But you're already saying that.
Well, I'm not saying he's going to lose.
He's going to lose?
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is he has the kind of cachet where either way it goes, he's still going to continue to rise. And that is the point where I think he or his people are saying, no, let's do this.
Right.
We can win this and let's do this. I don't want to say if we don't win this, they have a contingency plan, but I don't see him losing any cachet in the eyes of boxing if he doesn't win. He doesn't win, because he's already, as you say, he's a star. I just don't see him on the same level as Tito and Cotto right now. Yes, he's
those guys
right now,
special,
and I think he can attain that. In short order.
Yeah. Well, Xander Zayas is 23-0, man. He's 23-0, and he's again he's locking horns with Jaron Boots Ennis, who's 35-0 with 31 big wins. 31 big wins by way of KO. Harold, 31, right? Xander Zayas is only got 13 KOs. So, I shouldn't say only 13 KOs, but he's got 13 KOs, right? His percentage is about 56.52% KO ratio, right? And Jaron Boots Ennis's knockout ratio is 88.57. For those of you that like numbers, those are the numbers. What do you think, Harold?
Yeah, the numbers are pretty significant. Xander was brought along properly, though. He was given the right opponents as he progressed through the ranks. They were able to roll him into a situation where he had to put up and shut up, and he was able to do that.
Yeah.
And now he's in a situation where he has both belts. I'm not saying he was spoon-fed or anything like that, but he was brought along properly to get to the position where he's at.
Right.
Whether what he did was good enough for him to have the kind of pedigree or experience to fight Boots, that remains to be seen. Boots came up a little different way. he wasn't necessarily fed. With the first maybe 10, 15 fights, he was somewhat fed. But after that, he actually had to prove himself.
Yeah.
And I think he's already done that to a point. So we have to see how Xander's past work will, show forth in a fight with Boots, who obviously has more, you know, background and more experience.
Yeah.
But the youth is always served. Styles make fights. We don't know what kind of mental situation will occur in a fighter's mind. Something may happen somewhere and they're less focused or more focused. There's so many variables in boxing before that first round, when that first round ensues, that you really don't know what could possibly happen. That's the exciting part about boxing. So I'm happy to see the fight. And I love when the world doesn't know who is going to win. We all have our opinion, but actuality, it's kind of a 50-50 fight in most people's minds.
Oh, no, definitely a 50-50 fight. And actually, with all due respect, Jerome Boots Ennis is a highly technical, highly skilled, thoughtful athlete, right? He's all of that. He's all of it. And he's an athlete and he's a technician and he's, he knows what he has to do. He knows his job, his team. He's got a nice, strong team out here in Philadelphia. And Xander Zayas, is one of the very, very few in the recent past fighters that are actually the same exact dimensions, right? So in other words, Xander Zayas is younger. He's 23 years old. Boots is 29. Which, it's probably not, they're both in their primes. They're both, and you could even make the argument that Xander Zayas is a little bit before his prime, for sure. But they're both 5'10". They're both exactly the same height. And they both have exactly the same reach. They're both at 74 inches. So, they both have had very, very, in the last 5 outings, Xander Zayas has had he's won all his fights, and so is Boots. I would say that they both have the same number of KOs in their last 5 fights. I think I see that, right? But in any case, they're very it's literally if you were gonna chat GPT 2 guys you want to see fight that are really close, not unlike what we just talked about with Keith Thurman and Tim Tszyu. Those would be great. That would be a great matchup. This is this very, very similar stylistic matchup where, this could be a fun fight to watch, and yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, the youth of Xander is going to allow him to take, some punishment because he's not going to be really susceptible to getting hit. Right. I did a live fight with Boots in DC, and I just was viewing the fight. I was there I had to fight before it, but I had to sit down and watch him work, and he didn't have a knockout that fight.
Yeah.
And the guy he was fighting didn't really want to fight like that. He kind of stayed out of the pocket away from Boots the whole fight, and it was a unanimous decision.
Yeah.
And Boots couldn't really close the distance on him. At that time, he didn't know how to do it to get the knockout. And if I'm Zayas camp, I'm going to look at that. Boots may have progressed since then, but that is still out there, how that was done.
Yeah.
Now, if you do that and you score as you go along, you could beat Boots. And that's what I saw, sitting ringside. I saw that because Boots had been knocking everyone out and he could not get to this guy at all. Wow. But this guy just didn't have an offensive output so he could win each round while he was staying away from Boots. And I see Zayas having that kind of discipline if he needs to go to that.
Right.
That's a variable that I see.
That's interesting, Harold. That's interesting. This is a WBO title, right? It's Super Welterweight Championship, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think the promoter is Bob Arum, Top
Yeah,
Rank.
there's two belts. Xander has two belts.
Okay. Do you know what those belts are?
One's a BA and one's a BC, if I
Okay.
remember
So it's
correctly.
WBC and WBA. And yeah, I mean, Bob Arum and Eddie Hearn, which, by the way, if y'all didn't hear, they went into a multi-year contract. They're working together now pretty exclusively, which is great for Top Rank and certainly great for Matchroom and great for
With
the
the
boxing
zone.
community. Yeah, a lot of fighters will get off the bench because of that. So that's
Oscar's
good.
in it too.
I
Oscar's
know.
in both.
It's great. That's great news. And the matchmaker for this particular fight was Brad Goodman and Kevin Rooney. That's the one who put this. These guys put this fight together. So I love this fight. I really do. Hats off, you guys, for putting that fight together. And I think this is going to be a barn burner, and you guys are not going to want to miss this. This is on June 27th, and guess where it is, Harold?
I don't know.
Yo, bro, it's in
Vegas.
BK. No, it's in the BK. It's at the Barclays Center in my hometown, Brooklyn.
You may
It's
end up working
funky
the
fresh.
You may be working the fight, or if not, I guess you'll be ringside. One of the two.
Yeah, I will be in the arena for this one way or the other. We're either working and watching, or just watching. I don't care. I'll be there. Definitely be there for
As
this
you
one.
will.
Yeah, man. So this is good stuff, Harold. So, and finally, let's switch gears because we got one more thing to talk about, and that is the Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao matchup. We got about 4 more minutes, so let's crank this one out.
Okay, well, that fight was signed as a regular fight, but now Floyd is saying no, it's not a regular fight; it's exhibition,
That's
which
what
is
I
causing a flurry of legal situations. Now, this is a scuttlebutt. 3 contracts were signed by Floyd. He
Yeah,
signed one saying it's going to happen. He signed the second one saying it's going to happen.
yeah.
He signed the third one saying it's going to happen as a regular fight, and he took a cash advance from the proceeds of the fight upon his signing of the third document.
Right.
So he's obligated to do the fight as a real fight, as not an exhibition. He is feeling that he got what he wanted financially and all the money is aligned. Now he wants to skew it in his favor, meaning it's an exhibition. And he's saying, without me, it won't happen, whether exhibition or a regular fight. I choose for it to be an exhibition now. But upon my initial signings of these 3 contracts and a cash advance, it was presumed to be a sanctioned fight on both of our records. But now I decide I'll do it, but it has to be an exhibition. So now they're looking at litigation, they're looking at lawsuits, they're looking at a lot of things because he initially signed as a regular fight, but now he's backtracking. He's thinking that his cachet as being Floyd, his cachet as Pacquiao being Pacquiao, and the world demand for this fight, that he can change the parameters at this point.
Yeah.
And we have to see if he has enough power and cachet to actually supersede what he signed as a sanctioned fight to go on both of their records.
Wow. Well, that's interesting news. It doesn't surprise me. There's always some drama whenever it comes to, whenever Mayweather and Pacquiao, come into the news, there's always some interesting, scuttlebutt around it. And it makes for great, everybody's watching. The more eyes you get on it, the more eyes you get on it. Right. And so right now it's listed on BoxRec. I know it's listed on BoxRec as a fight that will actually take place. So it's not a question of if it's going to take place. It's a question of where. And I think it's at the Sphere in Las Vegas. That's where the fight's actually going to take place, which is where most of Manny Pacquiao's Mayweather's fights take place. And it's scheduled for September 19th, 2026. So We'll see what happens, man. I don't think there's much more to report about it at this point, other than to say it will happen. And, one way or the other, we'll see these two guys lock horns, and I can't wait. How about you?
Well, if it's exhibition, I have no interest.
Yeah. I get that. I get that.
I'm
I
not.
get that.
I'm not going to watch it. I'm not going. It's just. It doesn't mean anything. It's
There's too
not
many.
staged, but it's not. It's not. There's nothing really on the line other than the financial gain for both fighters and all those communities you said that are involved in
Yeah.
those in that. As far as the competition is concerned and the get back for Pacquiao, if it's an exhibition, I have no interest. I'll talk about it, because we do that, but I have no interest in it. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other if it's exhibition. I don't.
I get it.
I give it no credence at all.
Well, the credence that I give is in you, because you are a great co-host. Thank you so much for being with us today, Harold. You rock, and I love the conversations. Folks, thank you for being with us today. This rounds out the end of our program. And don't forget, please go to YouTube, hit that subscribe and notifications button, Facebook, Instagram at The Boxing Breakdown. And don't forget
Boxing Breakdown.
Yeah, man, download us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll see you on the next episode of The Boxing Breakdown. Peace and love. See you around the horn.